All right, welcome back to the dark mode drawing room question and answer series, the definitive question and answer series regarding my book, The Drawing Room and Dark Mode. It's two books in one. So once again, the book is divided into two sections, thus the title. I plan to write 11 short stories, which would comprise a book, and the working title of that book was The Drawing Room. It had several other titles in the process of writing it. The Prisoner's Apology was also the title at one point. The Prisoner's Apology, referring to the title of a story that was, I thought, obviously the worst story, and thus it's not in this version. Dark Mode is this whole chunk of the book. So those are supposed to be the last. It was supposed to be the last short story that I wrote for the book. It wound up being almost its own book itself, but at 100 pages. Neither the four short stories that began the book made a satisfying collection, nor did Dark Mode on its own. So that's why they're all together. There will be an extended version that will feature all 11 stories, or 12, depending on how you count them. So the first story that I'm going to talk about is story number 2, The Scorpion. I'm going to answer some questions you might have about the story from the perspective of a fictional reader asking myself about the story, because nobody else has read it except me. So I gave The Scorpion a read through today. It had one mistake. On page 25, it says the man in the umbrella. It's supposed to say the man with the umbrella. That has been changed and will be in the full version, the full 11 story version of the book that will come out in, I don't know, 2 months maybe, pending some story submissions to various publications. The biggest question somebody might have about the Scorpion, well, there are two questions. One is like what happened basically, and the other big question is, who is Doug? What is the deal with that? So the Scorpion is a story that I conceived of living in St. Paul. The idea was, what if something happened, some big geopolitical event happened that didn't really make sense for the reason that it was engineered by AI or by an LLM. And because AI and LLMs have well-known like hallucinations, just bits that aren't accurate, that are just nonsense, what if AI was in charge of something so grand in scale that an AI hallucination could change the course of humankind? And that's, in my opinion, that's a really strong idea. Arguably, the idea is stronger than the execution. But I wound up kind of straying away from that idea, although AI hallucinations definitely are peppered into the text. The ending sort of takes the form of an expository dump, if you will, or sort of what I call a Perry Mason ending. In old episodes of Perry Mason, Della Street, the secretary, would always come out and say, "Just one thing I don't understand, Perry," and then he would just explain the plot to his secretary. And that's the only way that you could understand the book. Like any writer, I try to avoid those things. They're generally considered lazy and a result of not having well thought out stories. It's extremely hard to tell the story of the Scorpion without that kind of expository dump. So if there are any changes to the story, it would try to be to steer the text away from doing that. As it is, I'm kind of okay with it. Alan Rust is a trillionaire architect, definitely modeled after one of the particular billionaires living in this world. I think it's pretty obvious who it's supposed to be. Not an individual that I know personally, per se, but one I'm very familiar with. The Scorpion is a private security force that's taken over all law enforcement in the United States, and in particular, they've taken over security of the daily happenings of Congress, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. Although in my universe, at this timeline, at that point in time, there is no difference between the two parties. It's engineered for the sole purpose of there being theater and there being the idea that there is some opposition. One of the important things to take note of is the idea that there's the control party and the opposition party, and how obvious it is just from those terms alone that there is no difference between the parties, that they're all owned by the same people. And there is a mention in one line, they say the AI tends to miss things like that, referring to the idea that if they can't literally see the control and opposition parties working together, then AI just will not make that very obvious logical leap. When I started to ask AI, Gemini, about the story of the Scorpion, it didn't really understand the intricacies of the story, things that were kind of brought out by the actions of characters. And I thought that was interesting, and I wanted to go further into that, not away from it. So there are a lot of particularities about how the game of Go is played that kind of give some ideas of what the characters are thinking. The second question that I proposed as a fictional reader was, who is Doug Jarvis? Doug Jarvis, I think of him as like the hand of a god who's just happens to be there playing the game of Go, but he's really like this huge network of AIs, or this huge network of information that is, as a whole, the Scorpion security firm. So they play a larger role in the downfall of society in my universe, but that's kind of as far as it gets for this. But hopefully that answers some questions. What happens in the game of Go? Does Rust, or rather, does Doug let Rust win, or does he allow there to be a tie? He engineers a draw, because in my experience, if you have a much superior player who's going against somebody that they want to placate, that's the reasonable, obvious thing to do. So that's what is kind of supposed to be represented there. Hopefully that makes sense. I guess the big question is, why does Doug take the white Go stone? Which, if you have to read the book, if you want to understand what I'm talking about, but why does he take the stone? And that is a question that I don't necessarily have an answer to. It's such a subtle action, and it's not at all central to the story itself. So that's one of the things that AI didn't have any comments on, and one that I hope the readers will reflect on. So that is it for my story about the Scorpion. A good story. I would rank it right in the middle of the rankings of each story. I would put it at maybe the 5th or 6th best story. So big fan. Pick up my book, The Drawing Room in Dark Mode, today. And if by now, when you watch the video, the authoritative author's edition has come out with all 11 stories, you better buy that. Thank you, and I'll see you next time in our definitive question and answer series.